John McDonnell is the Shadow Chancellor and is in our Westminster studio. Morning to you.
Morning.
And before we get to those policies, just a word about the vote today. Why don't you, Labour, vote to stop this election?
Because this will give the opportunity of people deciding whether or not they want a Conservative or a Labour government. I think people should have that right. We're not going to stand in the way of that. And we see this as an opportunity for actually removing a Tory government and replacing it with a Labour government.
But the wide feeling in the country among many people, and we heard from quite a few of them yesterday, is that this is an unnecessary election. Labour have the power to stop it, to persuade and to do what they need to do by way of opposition to what the government wants to do with Brexit, and isn't using that power.
Well, this election isn't just about Brexit. The issue is that we oppose what the Conservatives are doing in terms of the management of the economy, and we oppose what they're doing in terms of the management of our public services, which are in crisis at the moment. And we believe the debate around Brexit, well, yes, the government has a mandate from the referendum, but it hasn't got a mandate in terms of the type of Brexit that they're going for. It's like a hard Brexit, which will turn our country into a tax haven.
Okay.
So our view now is now the Prime Minister has broken her word. She's broken the trust that people placed in her, not having a general election, a snap general election. Now she's done that. Let's get on. Let's have this debate.
And if you win, what will your Brexit objectives be?
Well, exactly as we've set out, basically, on our various tests that we put forward, which is...
So hang on, you say you set them out. For instance, on the single market, is Labour going to be committed to staying in the single market?
It's access to the single market. We'll want to negotiate tariff-free access to the single market. That's been one of our priorities, to protect jobs and the economy overall.
And if the European Union say, well, that means you must have free movement of people, Labour will say yes or no?
We believe we can negotiate with our European partners a managed and fair immigration system from the EU, which takes into account the needs of our economy. And all the discussions that we've had with our socialist and social democratic colleagues across Europe have given us an indication that they're looking for a constructive relationship based upon mutual interest.
So it won't be free movement?
It will be a managed migration, but fair managed migration.
Right, OK. But so there will be access. In your ideal situation, the thing you would be going for, assuming you're in power, you go for access to the single market, not membership of the single market. What about the customs union? Would we do our own trade deals around the world? Would we stay in the customs union? What
we'd seek to do is maximise the opportunities that we now get from the customs union. And again, that will be part of the negotiations.
Hang on, would we stay in the customs union?
Well, we'll see during the negotiations. But again, what we think we can do is make sure that we maximise the benefits that we receive from the customs union at the moment. And again, this will be part of the negotiations. The issue here is that the Prime Minister has a mandate to go off and do the negotiations. What you would normally expect to happen is that once those negotiations are coming to fruition, the government would then come back, put the deal to Parliament and possibly to the country overall. What we're being doled up at the moment is actually nothing by way of detail from the government about what they want to see, the vision that they have for Europe.
But I'm asking you for your vision for Europe. Never mind what the government will. What do you want? For instance, on trade, would you like Britain to be doing trade deals, its own trade deals around the world, or would you like us to stay in the customs union?
We want to ensure that we maximise the benefits that we currently have with regard to our relationship via the customs union. Again,
that's not a clear answer though for the electorate. Should the electorate expect that Labour is going around the world doing trade deals with other countries on behalf of this country, or that we stay in the customs union?
We're saying that we want to maximise the benefits that we currently get from the customs union. That does not necessarily mean full membership of the customs union, but these are the issues that should be negotiated over the coming months. And then when a deal is agreed, that can be then put to Parliament and possibly the British people, that's the time. At that stage, if there's need for one, that's when you'd call a general election.
Hang on, possibly the British people. So that we know there'll be a vote in Parliament. This current government has said there'll be a vote in Parliament, though they've also said, of course, that no deal is better than a bad deal. Actually, we would then simply leave the European Union if the deal were voted down. Is that Labour's position?
What we've said all the way along is that we want to ensure that there are constructive negotiations with our European partners, and then there will be a vote in Parliament on that deal. At that point in time, it's perfectly open to any government in power then to take that to the country. But you wouldn't do it at this stage when you haven't got any semblance of a deal or any indication of what that deal will look like.
And if there's a bad deal, or if there isn't a deal that you think the country would support, what then?
What we'd say basically is we'd tell the government to go back and negotiate again. And that's the normal process of these negotiations, that you ask the government to go away and negotiate with the mandate that they have from the referendum, come back with the details of that deal, allow Parliament to scrutinise that, and then if there is agreement, fine. If there isn't, you'd expect the government then to go back and negotiate effectively the reforms that Parliament would want to see, the additional reforms.
All right.
That's what everyone, I think, was expecting. What they weren't expecting was this precipitous election. And I don't think, actually, this election is about Brexit.
You had the opportunity to stop them getting this precipitous election, but you've told us right at the beginning you're not going to use it.
I don't think this election is about Brexit. I think what this election is about is that the government has seen that the economy at the moment is going to turn, and we're seeing inflation increasing, we're seeing wages stagnate, and we're seeing people in heavy debt as a result of that. They know the economy's turning over the next 12 months and they'll be deeply unpopular. They also know
on economic policy.
Well, they also know our public services are in crisis.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you're going to do about all that. You brought us on to economic policy. One of the things Jeremy Corbyn actually raised on this programme a couple of months ago was the idea of having a maximum income. Are things like that going to be in your manifesto?
Yes, they will be. We've been arguing that we will go for pay ratios. And again, we've in our campaign in the local government elections, we've raised that. We'll use public procurement to secure pay ratios.
And that's a ratio rather than a cap, just to be clear.
Well, a ratio with regard to the maximum that will be earned by chief executives and directors and others in relation to the average pay of their workers. Because we want a fair
and that's
economy.
a rollback, because Jeremy Corbyn did talk about a cap.
Well, that sets a cap according to that ratio.
Yes, but there will not be a cap on maximum incomes. You will not be going into this election saying to people, you may not earn more than a certain amount of money. It's not going to be as plain as that.
It will be a pay ratio, and that in itself will set a cap in terms of what the maximum earning will be within that company in relation to the average worker's pay, because we believe in fairness within our economy.
And is it your intention as well that the total tax take goes up under Labour? Never mind where the taxes actually fall, but that Labour would raise more money in tax than is raised at the moment.
We'd maintain the average at the moment, because what we want to ensure is actually there's a fair taxation system. We believe that if we can get a fair taxation system, tackling tax evasion and tax avoidance, making sure that we don't end the tax giveaways to the corporations and the rich, we'll be able to afford the public services that we need.
Really, without needing to raise more in taxation?
We'll be looking to see how we ensure a fair taxation system. And to be frank, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking to the corporations and to the rich to pay their share.
And who are the rich?
Well, you look at what's happening in this country at the moment, and you'll see that the burden in terms of the tax take has fallen on middle and low earners. And you're talking about people below the higher tax bands. Those above the higher tax bands.
So people in the higher tax bands, in other words, including 40%?
No, not at all. What we've been able to do is support the lifting.
Hang on, where are the rich?
We believe we're talking about the rich will be above £70,000 to £80,000 a year, and that's roughly defined as what people feel is an earning that whereby people feel they can pay.
So that's
more.
very clear. So if you earn above £70,000 to £80,000, you can expect to pay more in tax. And in terms of what it is,
that's not what we've said. Let me just say.
I thought that was just what you said. So you said, hang on a second. You've just said you're going to tax the rich more, and you've said the rich are above £70,000 to £80,000.
What we've said is that we want a fair system of taxation to pay for our public services. In the coming weeks, we'll be publishing our proposals about how we establish that within our manifesto. I think there's a general view in society at the moment that middle and low earners are being hit very, very hard with a combination, as we've seen from this government, of both income tax rises, but also in terms of the burden that's placed upon them by stealth taxes, and also, as we saw, attempts by this government to increase national insurance payments on the self-employed. What we want to get is a system which is fair, so the corporations and the rich pay their way more. And that means ending the tax giveaways to the corporations and also those in inheritance tax and in capital gains tax and the bankers' levy, all of those giveaways under this government.
John McDonnell.
I think there'll be a considerable majority that will support it. As I say, the Prime Minister said she wouldn't play these party political games and that there wouldn't be a snap general election. So it is a breakdown of trust. But nevertheless, this gives us the opportunity to debate the issues about the future of our country, and we'll take that opportunity.
Personal ratings of the Prime Minister and Jeremy Corbyn have quite a stark contrast, and of course, you know, we can look at polls with different eyes perhaps. Can Jeremy Corbyn win this election for you? Is he the man to do it?
Well, he can, and you know, people have, first of all, don't be deceived by the polls. They've not been accurate either in terms of the last general election or the referendum, and indeed even in America with the Trump election. But also, I think, you know, people have underestimated Jeremy Corbyn all the way along, and we saw that in the Labour leadership elections. And particularly when he was able to debate head-to-head with alternative candidates, he was able then to demonstrate the sort of person he was, a decent, principled person. Now again, I'm hoping that the Prime Minister changes her mind about this issue of head-to-head televised debates. She's refusing at the moment, but I think that would be critically important to have in this election campaign. And on that basis, I think you'll find that people will see that actually Jeremy Corbyn is the sort of, well, the new Prime Minister that we want. Someone who's honest and decent and looks after the long-term interests of the country rather than these short-term party politics that Theresa May's engaged in now.
To get a majority of one, the Labour Party would have to engineer a swing on the scale that Tony Blair did in 1997. Is that a realistic prospect?
Well, I don't believe the polls are the way they are at the moment. And I think, as I say, people will react against this breakdown in trust by the Prime Minister in calling a snap election. She's taken the people of this country for granted, and there's an arrogance there that I think people will react against. And you'll find that as we debate the real issues about what's happening to our economy, our public services, and yes, about our future relationship with Europe, I think you'll find that the polls will narrow and that there'll be a real opportunity for a Labour government.
And you could think you could make that kind of scale that Tony Blair did in 1997, that could be the kind of measure of it, do you?
Yes, I think we can. I tell you, as I say, I think the Prime Minister has misjudged this. She's taken people for granted. People don't want elections when they don't feel there's a need for one, but now it's happening. I think people will actually say, well, she promised us one thing, she's doing another. How can you trust this Prime Minister? And this is a fundamental breakdown of trust. And you know, we know this is, the campaign, I think, is going to be, what we've seen so far, even on the first day, is pretty nasty. You've seen the front page of the Daily Mail calling anyone who opposes Theresa May as a saboteur. And I'm hoping the Prime Minister today will disavow that and actually make sure that, well, newspapers like the Daily Mail, who support the Conservative Party, don't drag this general election campaign into the gutter as they seem to want to be.
Talk about timing. I mean, you've talked about her, the point you make about her calling this election now, but are you happy with the timing? Do you think you're ready?
Well, we've been working on the basis from last November. We put the general election on, we put the party on a general election footing. So we've been working on the basis that she could call one at any time. So yes, we're ready, and we have got 500,000 members geared up to on the streets campaigning. Well, many of them already out there. Parliamentary Labour Party atmosphere in their meeting last night was tremendous. People wanting to get out there and campaign for a Labour government. And I believe once we get into the discussion of the policies, and as I say, hopefully a head-to-head debate between Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May, I think you'll see that there'll be significant shift in public opinion over the next few weeks.
And if you're ready, what's your slogan?
Well, that will be revealed in due course. We'll be announcing our manifesto, and we'll be announcing our overall campaigning materials and slogans. Watch this space. That will be happening over the next week or so. But we're out in the field already because we've got the local council elections and the mayor elections that have taken place. And you've seen in recent weeks we've been announcing policies which have been proved to be incredibly popular, associated with Jeremy Corbyn. And I think that might well have been a factor that Theresa May took into account, that she saw that actually Labour was becoming increasingly popular on the basis of the policies that we were advocating. And that's another reason I think she's gone to the country.
And you remember that Labour lost a by-election in Copeland in February as well. Just talk very briefly, would you, about unifying the party. And we've got MPs like, for example, Tom Blenkinsop saying he won't stand for re-election, citing irreconcilable differences with party leadership. Can Jeremy Corbyn also reunite the party?
Yes, he can. Look, Tom, unfortunately, has never supported Jeremy from the beginning, and I wish him well for the future. But what we saw in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night at our meeting was unity, and that's right the way across the party membership and our support, wanting to get out there now to elect a Labour government, because we need one. With the NHS in crisis, school budgets being cut, and elderly people, 1 million who need care not getting that care, we need a Labour government very fast.
And just very briefly, I'm sure you saw Brenda from Bristol are not happy there's another election. Do you have sympathy with her in some ways?
Yeah, I completely understand that, because she trusted the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said there'd be no snap general elections. She's broken that trust, and I think I can understand Brenda's frustration. But my response to Brenda is the way to get back is to actually vote for a Labour government.
John McDonnell, Shadow Chancellor, thank
Remember
you for your time.
Cleggmania back in 2010, or Nicola Sturgeon's surprise popularity in the debates in 2015. Perhaps that's why Theresa May is trying to avoid it, but I think with all the other party leaders very keen, pressure will only continue to mount over this issue in the coming weeks.
OK, Tamara, for the moment, thank you. Joining me now here in Westminster, Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell. Mr McDonnell, the Prime Minister confirming this morning that she's not for U-turning when it comes to the subject of TV debates. It won't be happening.
Oh, that's disappointing. I'm not sure if that will hold anyway. I think public pressure will be such that I think she might have to change her mind yet again on something.
In terms of the election itself, yesterday you said bring it on. You welcomed the chance of a snap election in June. But looking at polls, the Conservatives on average have a lead of about 15 points.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister herself has approval ratings of 50%. And when you look at analysis across the board, it's predicted that Labour will at best be defeated, at worst be obliterated. Where does your optimism and your confidence come from going into an early election?
I don't believe the polls.
A lot of people don't, but they're saying even if they get them 50% wrong, Labour will still lose.
Well, look, they got them wrong the last general election. They got them wrong in the referendum. They even got them wrong with Trump's election in America, so I don't believe the polls. I actually think as well, this is an issue about trust at the moment. People believed the Prime Minister when she said on the steps of Downing Street she's not going to play party political games, she's not going to have a general election. And the first major decision, what does she do? She breaks that trust. So I think people will be quite angry that she's broken the trust in that way. I think there'll be a reaction against that. But I think once we get into the debate about the real issues, the policies, about what's happening to our health service, education, what's happening to the economy, what's happening to care for the elderly, and also what's happening about our future relationship with Europe, once we get into that debate, I think you'll see the polls narrow and the prospects of a Labour government. I think that's why she's avoiding the televised debate, because if you look at what happened to Jeremy Corbyn when he was elected leader of the Labour Party, no one gave him a chance whatsoever. And then he had the first live TV debate with the other candidates, and all of a sudden he became a candidate who could win. That's why she's avoiding the debates. And I don't think that will hold. I think people out there want to have an honest debate.
Well, there's weeks to come to put pressure on the Prime Minister to change her mind. We will wait and see. When it comes to the vote today, how will Labour be voting? Because you had a meeting last night and there was a lot of pressure put on Jeremy Corbyn to abstain from today's vote.
There was different views expressed because we're a democratic party. Some were saying abstain on the vote today and force the government to come forward with its own motion of no confidence in itself, which I couldn't see happening tactically. And we felt, well, now that she's decided to go for an election, let's get on with it and let the people decide themselves. Because in some ways, she's taken the people of our country for granted. She's looked at the polls as well. And so for short-term party advantages, she's going for a general election. I think people feel as though it's an unnecessary general election. She's taking us for granted, but nevertheless, let's have that debate.
She's taking you for granted, but can you win, do you think, with Jeremy Corbyn in charge? 3 MPs have decided not to stand. You've got John Woodcock, MP for Barron-Furness, putting up a video on Facebook calling for Jeremy Corbyn to say that. I know he's a critic of his, but it's quite a dramatic move.
It is, it's a shame. John has never supported Jeremy, and he has been quite... well, he's been quite strong in that view for a period of time and expressing it publicly.
But is there a feeling that with Jeremy Corbyn leading the party, you can win this election?
Well, of course there is. And what's interesting in all of this, the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting last night, there was real unity. Let's get out there and campaign. Let's get out there setting out our policies. And it's interesting, we're having the local election campaigns at the moment. We've been setting out some of those policies. They've proved to be immensely popular. And when you associate Jeremy Corbyn's name with them, that popularity is maintained. So I think that might have been another factor in which the Prime Minister decided she should go to the polls now. Because actually I think she realises that actually the policies out there that we were advocating, we were building support and momentum in our campaign.
We had the Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron on Sunrise about an hour or so ago, and he was saying that they are now the credible opposition to the
Well,
Conservatives
he would,
rather
wouldn't
than
he?
Labour. Of course he
Yeah,
would.
of course he would.
But there's a lot of talk about the formation of a progressive alliance. No one party can at the moment go up against the Tories and defeat them. So there is this idea that Labour, the Lib Dems, SNP and the like should all come together to formulate a plan to defeat the Conservatives. Is that something that you would consider?
No, because I don't think people want backroom deals like that. They want to be able to vote for a party that they have confidence in. And I think the reality is this, is that there's only one alternative government in this country, and that's the Labour Party. And once we get into the discussions about the policies themselves, the future of our country, I think you'll see emerging significant support for a change in government and a change for Labour. I think the number of Conservatives are worried about the revival of the Lib Dems in some areas of the country. That
Labour aren't?
No, they seem to be challenging the Tories, not ourselves. So it'll be quite interesting, the fight between the Tories and Libs on all of this. But in our policies will be fairly straightforward. We'll set them out. And I think you'll find that people, although they believe this election is unnecessary, they'll take the opportunity of changing the government.
What will Labour be fighting this election on? The statement that was put out yesterday contrasted greatly to the Lib Dems, who are fighting this on Brexit, it seems. Yours concentrated on domestic matters, no mention of Brexit whatsoever. How will you be campaigning?
It's about the future of the country. It's about having a fair economy that works for everybody, investing in our public services, a fair taxation system, making sure we invest in our public services and grow our economy as well, but also on Brexit, making sure we have a relationship with Europe which protects jobs in our economy. So that all of those issues they'll distinguish us from the Conservatives, certainly, but also I think they'll inspire people about the need for a change of government.
OK, Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, good to speak to you here on Sunrise this morning. Busy day ahead. Thank you for taking the time. We do have pictures of the Prime Minister at Downing Street this morning. There she is just arriving. Obviously, everything's going to get underway here at midday with Prime Minister's questions, and then there will be the debate and the vote as well. But that's the latest we have from Downing Street this morning. And as with every election,